in the midst of disappointing durable good numbers, some disappointing news coming out of Apple and Procter & Gamble, some other companies, regardless of the disappointing news coming out of the Eurozone, which is very disappointing, should be a reality check to all of us here, but it is not and won't be. Some are expecting, I read 3 times this morning, 3 different places this morning, some are expecting a 3% first look GDP growth on Friday for the first quarter. 3%. We'll see. I think if it's 2%, 2% would be more than it should be, in my opinion, based on the real economic news, not the market news, the real economic news. But we shall see. Some are expecting 3%. 888-589-8840. Let me go to Adrian in Oklahoma. Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. Rick in Mississippi. I see that now. Hey, Rick.
Good morning. How are you, Dan?
Good.
Excellent. First of all, I appreciate your ministry. It's vitally important for Christians to be good stewards of the Lord's resources.
Thank you.
My wife and I we're virtually a few weeks away from being 100% debt-free.
Good for you.
And we are in the Christian ministry. And I have a question with regards to the federal government and the world economics.
Okay.
Is it possible, Dan, that, and they always say follow the money trail if you want to find out something.
Yes.
It seems that the federal government we're in such debt that they have no plan to repay it. And with the European market being the same way, and China's on the way as well in many ways, is it possible that there is known to the federal government an impending natural disaster? And I say that because knowing the end, that I believe we're in the end times, and all throughout the New Testament, Old Testament, the Lord reveals to us what the end times are going to look like, and it's disasters, both celestial, being of the heavens, the skies, outer space, that's celestial, and terrestrial, being of the earth, that there's going to be disasters like never before. Is it possible that the federal government is aware of this, that there is something, because we've been seeing asteroids coming into Earth like we've never seen before, and I believe we're on the outskirts of something such as that. Is it possible that the federal government is aware of something like this? Could they hide the financial preparations that they're doing for an impending disaster and yet not tell the populace of something like this?
Yes, they could hide that. I think if we haven't learned anything in the last 5 years, we've learned the fact that they can hide anything and will hide anything from the American people. I think it's a little bit easier in the last 5 years to hide certain things than it had been in the past. And I say that because we don't have a news media any longer. In past times, in administrations, whether they be Democrat or Republican, we had what was real journalism and reporting. And we don't have that anymore. We've got social clubs and fan clubs that attempt to make reports based on the status of who it is or what they are reporting on, and based on the ideology based on the things that line up with their ideology. So we've got a situation where it's so much easier today to hide than it ever was in the past. So having said that, could they be planning for that, or could they be in recognition of that? Here's what I know, Rick. I got to believe that it is virtually impossible for the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, to not understand where we are headed from a financial standpoint. If something dramatic doesn't happen. If now there's one of two things. One scenario is they know that and will create that dramatic happening when the time is right or needed. Or they are proceeding knowing that they're not going to have to create it, that it is going to happen, maybe beginning in Europe or other parts of the world, trickling in to the United States. So maybe they know that is going to happen. I certainly do not, and I don't think you are either, Rick, but I certainly do not want to give them credit for understanding biblical prophecy. So, but at the same time, I think what you were getting at, does the science, the intellect that God gives scientists, showing that we are on the verge of one of these natural kind of disasters. I think that's what you were getting at, not that they certainly are following biblical prophecy. But so, I mean, certainly they've got to be smart enough to understand that we cannot continue to do this. When we look at the Federal Reserve basically on a path of having no capital if they're already not there because of the debt. The Federal Reserve is not subject to normal accounting principles. They have their own normal accounting principles that they put into place less than 2 years ago. So whatever the assets or the equity of the Federal Reserve is today, and I think it's somewhere around $60 billion, somewhere in that neighborhood. This would be unencumbered assets, is never going to change. Doesn't matter how much debt they have. They have to understand that they're going to go to zero in worth, even though it's not showing that on paper. They've got to understand that. And I think the federal government and the Treasury Department has to understand that at some point in time. Now, maybe they're dependent upon the natural disaster or the disasters that are impending that may be somewhat planned are going to pull them out of this mire like it has in the past. Maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe they're thinking that, what we need is a good world war and we'll be okay. Or maybe they're thinking that there is disastrous times ahead that are going to give an excuse to devalue the dollar and write off the debt and bankrupt America. And like all bankruptcies, most bankruptcies, there will be, coming out of the ashes of bankruptcy, a new economy, a new America, a stronger America, a bigger nanny state, more social control, more power of American government. Maybe that's what they plan on coming out of the ashes.